Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is the newest installment to the Planet of the Apes reboot franchise, directed by Wes Ball. The logline is as follows. Many years after the reign of Caesar, a young ape goes on a journey that will lead him to question everything he's been taught about the past and make choices that will define a future for apes and humans alike. This movie had some pretty big shoes to fill because the other 3 films in this series were so strong, particularly the 2 films made by Matt Reeves. However, this is a solid addition to the franchise that doesn't feel tacked on or like a cash grab. But at the same time, this film feels a lot more attached to a trilogy than the other films. Let me elaborate on that. With Rise, Dawn, and War for the Planet of the Apes, they were all great movies within the context of a trilogy, but they were also just great films by themselves. You could pluck any of those movies out and they could stand on their own as their own separate stories. But with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, you could tell that they are really setting up the next movie, and like the overall story isn't quite complete yet. This isn't necessarily a problem, but it does give this movie a different vibe from the others. The pacing of this movie is something I know a lot of people are going to have a problem with because the film takes its time in the first act, setting up the world and the characters. However, this is also a highlight of the film because the world building is so rich and interesting, and the characters are so strong and well developed. The setting is beautiful in this film, which is complemented and elevated by the great cinematography. One of my biggest problems with this movie is the plot, as right around the midpoint there is a bit of a shift in the focus of the story. I'll try my best not to get into spoiler territory, sorry if this sounds a bit vague. For the first half of the story, there is a clear goal and plot set out for these characters, but once they get to a certain location, the story pivots and there's an entirely new goal for our characters to overcome. And once they're in this new location, the momentum of the story just stops so we can set up more exposition for the climax. This makes the movie feel like 2 different stories that were stitched together. Also, I absolutely loved the villain in this story and how his ideology clashed with other characters, but we aren't introduced to him until the second half, so we don't get to spend very much time with him. I also wanted to see more of the human characters in this film because they don't feel as fleshed out as the ape characters. Overall, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is a solid installment into this franchise, even if it doesn't quite hold up against the other films. The world building and characters are amazing and leave you wanting to see what happens next in this story. The overall structure of the plot is a bit uneven, but it still offers lots of great moments. It's a strong 3.5 stars, and I recommend checking it out if you liked any of the previous Planet of the Apes films. This has been Tom from Eisenhart Productions, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week.